I'm Jill Bearup, this is History of Fanfiction, and if you are a big name fan, say, Snow Queen's Ice Dragon, and you write in a big old fandom, say, Twilight, and you have written a big name fic, say, Master of the Universe, then there's probably a small army of people who support your work. In the abstract sense, anyway. Fanfiction is largely a gift economy because of legality issues, but it is possible to parlay fanfic success into real-world money. Not without controversy, but it can be done. So as 50 Shades Darker hits cinemas today, let's talk about 50 Shades of Grey. Not the content, but the context. You can find on the internet many people who believe that 50 Shades of Grey is copyright infringement, and further, that Stephenie Meyer could sue E.L. James's plagiarizing backside for totally ripping off Twilight. So let's start with, Meyer has already said she has no interest in doing that. But let's continue with, you'd find it very hard to do that. Here's the thing. 50 Shades of Grey is not really very much like Twilight. Now this might be a surprising statement given that it originally appeared as Master of the Universe, a Twilight alternate universe fic, but it's true. Is 50 Shades of Grey technically a Twilight ripoff with more sex and less vampirism and different names? Well, sure, but those three changes are enough to make it an original work. Not just in the way the Statute of Anne would describe an original, nothing exactly the same exists, but in the way modern copyright law defines it. Or at least, you could definitely make that case. When it had the characters' names, it was alternate universe fanfic. With different names and a few changed details, the Twilight parallels are obvious if you're looking, but that doesn't really matter. Anastasia Steele is not Bella Swan, but because Anastasia Steele used to be Bella Swan, E.L. James had something of a baked-in audience when she decided to release her book into the mainstream. And that's not the whole reason for the success of the series, but that's a bit beyond our scope in this episode, to be honest. To return to the point, if you've written, for example, a Draco in leather pants / Hermione non-magical alternate universe, if you change their names to Kobra with a K, because that's just how we roll, and, I don't know, Jemima, no one's going to bat a legal eyelid. Frizzy-haired, smarty-pants teenage girls and misunderstood, brooding, angsty teenage boys are not copyrightable concepts. And so 50 Shades of Grey is most likely 100% legal, even if it is a Twilight fanfic with BDSM and no vampires. So then, what about actual fanfiction? That's more complicated. Way more complicated. And there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of fear out there, or at least there used to be. But because fanfic nowadays is so mainstream, almost, for which among other things we must thank 50 Shades of Grey, people are a little bit less leery about the whole legal issues thing, in general. That being said, there are a significant number of authors who have a zero-tolerance approach to fanfiction, and if you ask them why, they will likely say it is because of legal concerns. I don't want to be sued by some fanfic writer who thinks I stole their idea to use in my latest book, they cry. Or perhaps, I don't want to lose my trademark! And while it's definitely true that it's not really a good idea to read fanfic of your own work, a lot of this fear seems to stem from the most infamous fanfic legal saga ever to not actually involve any legal action. Sort of. We need to talk about Marion Zimmer Bradley. Marion Zimmer Bradley wrote the Darkover series of novels and was very much involved in her fandom. In fact, she even edited a fanzine for Darkover. But everything muddled along without significant incident for years until in 1989 Marion Zimmer Bradley had a stroke, which may or may not have left her with significant cognitive impairment, which may or may not mean that her subsequent books were wholly or mostly ghostwritten. In 1991, a fanzine published a story called Masks. Marion Zimmer Bradley wrote to the author of said work, Jean Lamb, and offered her $500 and an acknowledgement at the start of the book to use something in her work-in-progress novel, Contraband. They were unable to reach an agreement. Here's where it gets sticky. Jean Lamb says she wrote back to negotiate, so she asked for more money and she asked for a byline instead of an acknowledgement. Mercedes Lackey says that it wasn't that Marion Zimmer Bradley wanted to use the entirety of the work in her new novel, it was just that she liked the particular spin that Jean Lamb had put on one of the characters. Jean Lamb then claimed that Bradley had threatened her with lawyers, and Bradley claimed that her publisher would not publish her work-in-progress novel Contraband because of these issues. The publisher, when asked in 2010, claimed that it wasn't them that cancelled the novel, it was Bradley. So who knows? I don't know, probably someone. Regardless, there is no evidence that Jean Lamb, the fanfic writer, ever threatened to sue Marion Zimmer Bradley, the author, in this case. But this fact doesn't actually seem to matter very much, because the whole thing made a massive stink in fandom. Even though, to my mind, the problems mostly seem to stem from Bradley's over-involvement in the fandom and her trying to buy the rights of a story. Except, was she trying to buy the rights? Again, who knows? This story of fanfic and fandom has turned into a sort of urban legend, and given that there are several mutually contradictory statements, you can take out of it what you want. And it has meant that a lot of authors back in the day were very leery of fanfic, and a lot of fanfic authors were very secretive about the writing of fic. But time marches on and we forget, or new people come into the fandom and have never heard of this. And while authors generally do not read fanfic of their own work, to quote Sir Terry Pratchett, everything works if people are sensible. That doesn't mean a lot of them don't tacitly accept it or even encourage it. Not Anne Rice though. Anne Rice is still dead against the whole fanfic thing. Yeah, mine too. And you know what the best part is? And by best I mean worst. The legality of fanfiction is not at all clear. It would be consistent to be able to say all fanfic is illegal and you write it at your own risk, but there are two things which make it a little more complicated. First, as I said, a lot of rights holders accept or even encourage fanfiction. And second, yes, Virginia, there is such a thing as fair use. But it's probably nothing like you're thinking. Fair use is a legal defence against copyright infringement, and it is assessed on a case-by-case basis. Because of course it is. Basically, if someone claims copyright infringement, it is possible that you won't get your butt sued if you can claim fair use for teaching, research, scholarship, criticism, things like that. But this isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. Like I said, it's a legal defence that you use in court, and the court will decide whether or not they think the thing is actually fair use. And to decide this, they go on 4 factors. 1. The purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of a commercial nature or for non-profit educational purposes. 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. 3. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. And 4. The effect of the use on a potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. Most case law related to fanfic is in the realm of published unapproved works, like The Wind Done Gone, which is Gone with the Wind from the viewpoint of a different character. But case by case means there is no consistent legal treatment of fic. Is fic legal? Depends. Thankfully, practically speaking, it doesn't really matter because most people are not inclined to sue. And if you're in the right fandom, well, you might even be able to make money from it. Like I said, fanfic is a gift economy because non-profit uses of things are much less likely to raise ire than for-profit uses of things. But in 2013, Amazon launched a brand new shiny thing and they said, "Look, fic writers, here is a way that you can make money writing fanfic." And it was called Kindle Worlds. Naturally, a lot of people were wildly enthusiastic, and a whole lot more people were kind of side-eyeing the concept. Because first, would this mean tougher crackdowns on non-approved fanfic? It currently doesn't seem so. And second, would this damage the gift economy that fanfic operates in? Again, seems to be a no. And thirdly, what even is this? Here's the thing about Kindle Worlds. It has very little to do with fanfic as far as fan culture goes. You can write officially for fewer than 100 fandoms, and none of them are particularly large or, frankly, terribly popular with fic writers. The massive fandoms like Sherlock or Harry Potter or the MCU? Noopsies. And you can't publish explicit fic anyway, which cuts out great swathes of content. 4 years later, and Kindle Worlds is fewer than 100 worlds, most of which have fewer than 50 stories each. The thing is, Kindle Worlds was probably never going to be wildly popular, whether or not it made money, because it looks like the goody two-shoes cousin of fic sites. Whereas fanfiction.net is young and barmy, and Wattpad is obsessed with One Direction, and AO3 is where the slashers go, Kindle Worlds, even if you can get paid, is very hemmed in. Kindle Worlds demands stories which are neatly manicured gardens, so to speak, and it makes you pay to get in. But if you go to the free sites, then you can also find neatly manicured gardens, or deserts, or snowscapes, or jungles, or whatever else you want, for free. Just more legally questionably. The actual legality of unapproved fanfiction is something I'm really not qualified to advise you on. But as long as you aren't waving it in the faces of the author of the original work, it generally seems to be tacitly accepted. And with that clear as mud statement, we've come to the end of this episode, and having brought ourselves up to more or less the modern day, we're going to do something different for the next episode of History of Fanfiction. Next time we will be discussing an oft-maligned, much misunderstood character type. She has many names. Sometimes she isn't even a she, but you probably know her best as Mary Sue. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/JillBearup and do things there, or you can donate via PayPal, or if you don't really fancy either of those things, you can always follow me on Twitter @JillBearup and listen to me ranting about random things which may or may not include fanfiction. See you next time!